Hello friends, and welcome to a brand new camera comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A54 and the Samsung Galaxy S23. Of course, the A54 is a mid-ranger and the S23 is a flagship, but let's see together which one has better cameras. Right now we are recording at 4K at 30 frames per second. Tell me in the comment section below which one do you think has a better audio, which one has better colors, and which one has a better stabilization.
As per our standard practice, we begin with some samples captured using the primary cameras. Each daylight image was taken in auto mode with Scene Optimizer enabled. Upon initial comparison, the pictures appear impressive on both sides, with accurate color reproduction and sharpness. Upon closer inspection, specifically at her face, it becomes apparent that the S23 has retained more details. The A54 is also acceptable, but the flagship S23 seems to be doing a better job. In terms of landscape photography, the S23 has produced more visually appealing colors in the majority of the samples, while the A54's performance falls a little short. For instance, when comparing the sky captured by both devices, although the S23's sky appears to be somewhat oversaturated, it still outperforms the A54. I was however very surprised with the A54 since it did an amazing job by making darker things brighter and more visible. In this specific scenario I actually prefer it over the S23. Since the S23 is a flagship device equipped with a superior sensor, it outperforms the A54 in scenarios such as this one. Similar to before, the S23 once again produces more visually appealing colors, despite the fact that the A54 isn't bad itself. Overall, with their main cameras, I can say that the A54 represents a significant improvement and a step in the right direction, even though it doesn't quite match up to the S23's level. Both devices are also equipped with ultra-wide cameras, and in this aspect, the difference between the two seems to favor the Galaxy S23 to a greater extent. When looking at the lighter colors captured by the A54, it becomes apparent that they appear somewhat washed out, whereas the S23 retains them better. Even in scenarios where subjects are present within the frame, the A54 fails to match the performance of its more expensive counterpart. The A54 tends to overexpose the subject's face and render her jacket brighter than it should be, while the S23 produces more accurate colors. As you may recall, the A54 delivered impressive results with its primary camera at this location earlier, but in the case of the ultra-wide camera, its performance falls short compared to the S23, which produced a sharper and more refined image, by making the trees more visible. The A54 continues to show washed-out colors compared to the S23. However, considering its affordability and the fact that it represents a significant improvement over its predecessor, this may not be a significant concern for some users. As I mentioned in my previous video, the A54 delivers commendable performance given its price point. In addition to the primary and ultra-wide camera, the Galaxy S23 also features a 3x optical zoom telephoto sensor, while the A54 relies on digital zoom. When cropping in further, the benefit of the S23's camera becomes clear, but the A54 is not far behind, and while its picture may not be as sharp, it is still usable. When it comes to capturing images of people within the frame, the S23 stands out for its impressive ability to accurately represent skin colors and capture fine facial details. In contrast, the A54's camera tends to lose much of the finer details, making it less optimal for such scenarios. The S23 also performs better at capturing the colors of the sky, although I should note that the A54's digital zoom still delivers credible results in this regard. The A54 features a dedicated macro lens as its third camera, while the S23 doesn't even have a macro mode, and this is the closest I could take the image. Using the telephoto camera on the S23, we can achieve a similar picture quality to that of the A54. However, it is worth noting that the center of the flower appears sharper in the A54's image, while the edges appear sharper in the S23's image. Both devices are capable of capturing great portrait shots, although in my opinion, the S23 delivers slightly better results in terms of skin colors and a more natural blur. Edge detection is generally strong on both devices, although some minor errors are noticeable in relation to her hair. The A54 has done away with its depth sensor, which, in my opinion, was useless, as it did not make a difference at all. When it comes to front camera portraits, the S23 clearly outperforms the A54. Although both devices display similar edge detection capabilities, only the S23 is able to accurately reproduce skin tones that are nearly identical to real life. Even when snapping regular pictures without portrait mode, the A54 falls short in comparison to the S23. The A54 produces pictures with a cool tone, and many facial details are lost in the process. The S23, on the other hand, did an amazing job on retaining face details. The biggest difference is probably in this case, since on the S23 I look very sharp with accurate colors, while the A54 made my face very blurry and skin colors are nowhere near compared to real life. When recording videos with their main cameras, the differences are actually quite significant. Not with stabilization, since both are great, but in terms of colors, I prefer here the Galaxy S23, since the A54 really doesn't look that good. With the ultra-wide cameras, I was actually surprised when I saw that the A54 was brighter. Sure, the sky is a little washed out compared to the S23, but everything was more visible. At 3x the S23 is sharper, but the A54 is not bad at all despite having only digital zoom. Because it crops in with the main camera, the 3x on the A54 appears closer compared to the S23. Moving to low light, and from now on every picture is taken with night mode enabled. In places with plenty of light sources, both phones are able to hold their own, but I noticed that the reflections are much more pronounced on the A54. In situations where there were fewer light sources, the S23 was able to produce a brighter and more pleasing image overall. Although it was not flawless, it clearly outshines the A54 in this comparison. When capturing images with their main cameras, the A54 performs fairly well, particularly when there are light sources in the frame. Despite not being as capable as the S23, which is a flagship device, the A54's image quality is worth considering. In situations where there are no light sources, the difference between the A54 and S23 is very noticeable. In a sample where the environment was pitch black, the S23 performed exceptionally well, while the A54, although acceptable, was not as refined as the flagship. In this sample, the Galaxy S23 showed its superior capability in low-light situations by capturing more details that were not visible to the naked eye, such as the details on the tree. While the A54 still performed well on its own, the S23 produced a brighter and more detailed image, showcasing its flagship-level performance. While there may have been instances where the A54 appeared to handle lights better, a closer view of the image reveals that the S23 is actually sharper and has preserved more details overall. Nevertheless, the narrative changes entirely when switching to ultra-wide cameras. In this case, the S23 manages to retain almost the full quality of its main camera, while the A54 is barely visible. It's evident from these samples that only the main camera of the A54 got all the attention, while its other cameras seem to be just average. In contrast, the S23 boasts exceptional cameras across the board, delivering impressive results. While there were some instances where the A54 managed to capture a competing image, it was only when there was plentiful lighting. The S23, however, still reigns supreme, though the difference between the two isn't as significant as in previous cases. As predicted, the S23 shines at 3x zoom, delivering a sharper and better image. However, the A54 is not too far behind. It has a softer image, but it is still quite usable. Even with people in the frame, the A54 manages to capture a decent picture. While the S23 produces a sharper image with more visible hair details, the A54 holds up well and produces a praiseworthy result. So, what do you think, guys? Which one was your winner? Personally, I prefer the S23, but I must admit that the difference in quality wasn't as significant as I had anticipated. Moreover, considering that the A54 is significantly cheaper, it's impressive how well it performs. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching.